My name is Daniel Morrison. I'm 29 years old, and for the last time in my life, I heard my father call me a failure. It was during our annual family reunion at Martha's Vineyard when he raised a champagne glass and announced 250 guests. I'm proud of all my children, except the failure who insists on playing artist. The silence that followed was deafening. But what happened next? Well, let's just say my father discovered who the real loser in that room was. Before I tell you how I turned the tables, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever been underestimated by your own family, hit that like button and subscribe. What I revealed that night changed our family forever. Growing up in the Morrison family meant one thing: corporate excellence or total failure. My father, Richard Morrison, built an empire in Boston real estate, transforming Morrison Holdings into one of the largest developers on the East Coast. Our Beacon Hill home looked more like a showroom than a home, every room perfectly decorated to impress potential investors. We were 4 siblings, and I was the third. My oldest brother, Richard Jr., or RJ, as everyone called him, followed in Dad's footsteps perfectly. At 35, he was already the vice president of the company, married to a senator's daughter, with 2 kids in elite prep schools. My sister, Victoria, 32, graduated from Harvard Law and is now a partner at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. Married to a cardiac surgeon, she embodied everything my parents valued: power, prestige, and pedigree. Even my younger brother, Marcus, 26, was on his way to family-approved success. MBA from Wharton, engaged to a hotel heiress, ready to take over the international division of the company. And then there was me, the artist. Since childhood, while my siblings played office, I drew while they read the Wall Street Journal at breakfast. Yes, my father insisted on this on Sundays. I doodled on napkins. My mother, Eleanor, initially thought it was cute until she realized it wasn't a phase. Daniel, darling, she'd say with that tense smile, art is a wonderful hobby, but Morrisons don't live on hobbies. At 16, I won a national art competition. My teacher said I had exceptional talent, that I should consider art schools. When I mentioned this at dinner, my father laughed. Art schools, he sneered. What for? To learn how to starve with style? RJ laughed along. Victoria shook her head in pity. Marcus, then 13 years old, looked at me like I'd suggested joining the circus. But my paternal grandmother, the only person who supported me, winked at me from across the table. Grandma Rose had been a painter before marrying my grandfather. She understood. Not everyone was born to build buildings, Reacher, she said calmly. Some were born to fill them with beauty. My father rolled his eyes. Beauty doesn't pay bills. Mother, the pressure only increased when college time came. My father had it all planned. I would go to his alma mater, study business, and join the company. He even had a separate office for me, with my name on the door, still empty, waiting. When I got accepted to Rhode Island School of Design, RISD, one of the best art schools in the country, I naively thought he'd be impressed. After all, it was as hard to get in there as Harvard. You're not going, he said simply, tearing up the acceptance letter. I won't pay a cent for this fantasy. It was Grandma Rose who saved my dream. She had a trust fund my father had no control over. Use it for your education, she said, handing me the documents. And don't let anyone dim your light. The 4 years at RISD were liberating and lonely. While my classmates received family visits, I only had Grandma Rose, who drove from Boston once a month to see my progress. My parents, they told friends I was finding myself before joining the family business. After graduation, reality hit hard. My fine arts degree impressed no one at home. On the rare occasions I showed up for family dinners, it was always the same. Still playing with paints, RJ would ask, feigning interest? It's a legitimate career, I'd reply. Tired. Of course it is. Victoria would add condescendingly, someone needs to paint portraits of important people. I moved to a tiny loft in Brooklyn, working 3 jobs to pay rent while painting in the early morning hours. Waiter, gallery assistant, substitute, art teacher. My parents told friends I was in hospitality and education, technically true, but dishonest in context. Family gatherings became elaborate tortures. Every July, the family gathered at the Martha's Vineyard property for my father's birthday weekend. It was less celebration and more an annual conference where each child presented their achievements. RJ talked about multi-million dollar acquisitions. Victoria mentioned important cases. Marcus impressed with international expansions. And me, I smiled and changed the subject when they asked about my hobby. This year, something was different. Over the past 18 months, my life had changed drastically, but I kept everything secret. Not even Grandma Rose knew the extent of what had happened. She had passed away the previous year, leaving me not only her final financial support, but her own paintings, which she had hidden in the attic for decades. I arrived at Martha's Vineyard, driving the same old Honda Civic, wearing jeans and a simple shirt. The mansion was decorated with the usual pomp white-gloved waiters, string quartet flowers that cost more than my old monthly rent. "Daniel," my mother greeted me with that stiff hug she had perfected. "You look well." The question carried layers of judgment. I wasn't tanned from vacations in Ibiza like Marcus. I didn't have RJ's $200 haircut. I wasn't wearing the Patek Philippe watch Victoria flaunted. "I'm great, Mom." She examined me. "Well, try to mingle." "The Whitmans are here, and their daughter Charlotte just got divorced. Maybe you two have something in common." The implication was clear. Two failures could bond. The cocktail hour proceeded with the usual script. Important investors, local politicians, Boston's elite, all gathered to kiss my father's ring. I caught fragments of conversations. RJ closed the Miami deal, $50 million. Victoria won the case. Historic precedent. Marcus expanded to Tokyo. Record profits. And then, inevitably, the other son? "Oh, he's an artist," said like it was a contagious disease. I found my usual spot in the corner, observing. That's when James Rothschild approached. I recognized him, one of the country's biggest art collectors, though I doubted anyone here knew that. To them, he was just another billionaire. "Daniel Morrison," he said, extending his hand. "I've been waiting to meet you for months." I choked on my champagne. "Mr. Rothschild, what brings you here?" He smiled mysteriously. "Your father invited me. He has no idea who I am beyond my investment portfolio. But I came specifically to see you. We have business to discuss, but perhaps after dinner." Before I could respond, my father tapped his glass, calling for attention. Friends, family. My father began standing at the head of the dining table. "Thank you for joining us to celebrate my 65th birthday." Polite applause. My father loved these moments, commanding the room, all eyes on him. As I look around this table, I see success. I see legacy. I see the Morrison Empire's future shining bright. He gestured to RJ, my firstborn, who this year brought more profit to the company than I did in my first decade. Enthusiastic applause. RJ waved modestly. Victoria, my brilliant daughter, named one of the most influential lawyers under 40. Marty applause. Victoria raised her glass gracefully. Marcus, expanding our reach globally, proving the next generation is ready. Marcus beamed as guests applauded. My father paused, took a sip of his 30-year. I braced myself, expecting to be ignored as always, but knew. "I'm proud of all my children," he continued, his tone shifting. "Except," he looked directly at me, "except the loser who insists on playing artist instead of contributing something meaningful to this world." The silence was absolute. 200 eyes turned to me. My mother pretended to examine her napkin. My siblings looked uncomfortable, but not surprised. While his siblings build empires, my father continued, clearly having drunk more than he should. Daniel paints. While they create jobs and move economies, what does he do again? Doodles that nobody buys. Some nervous laughter from the crowd. I felt my face burn. "Do you know what it's like to be asked about all my children and have to explain that one of them chose poverty and He shook his head theatrically. "It's embarrassing." "You're embarrassing, Daniel." I stood up slowly. Every movement, deliberate, controlled. I looked at no one except my father. "You're right, Dad," I said calmly. "I'm a disgrace to a Morrison name." I placed my napkin on my untouched plate. "Excuse me." I walked out of the dining room, crossed the marble hall, and kept walking. Behind me, I heard shocked murmurs. My mother hissing something at my father, chairs scraping. But I didn't stop. Outside, James Rothschild was leaning against a Bentley, as if waiting for me. "Quite an exit," he said, though I expected bigger fireworks. "The night's not over," I replied. He smiled. "No, I imagine not. My driver can take you wherever you need to go." "But Daniel," he paused. When you're ready to reveal who you really are, I promise I'll be in the front row. I got in the car, my mind already formulating what would come next. My father wanted significance. Contribution. He was about to discover exactly how much his loser son had accomplished. The Bentley took me back to Manhattan, where I kept my real office. Not the Brooklyn loft my family imagined, but a penthouse in Tribeca that served as my studio and headquarters. Over the past 18 months, my life had transformed completely. It started when I discovered Grandma Rose's paintings. They weren't amateur work. They were masterpieces she had created before suffocating her talent for marriage. An appraisal revealed they were worth millions. But it was what I did next that changed everything. Instead of selling them, I used them as collateral to launch my own gallery. But not just any gallery, a revolutionary platform that combined physical art with NFTs and augmented reality. Suddenly, collectors worldwide could experience and buy art in ways never before possible. My work, which I'd been developing quietly for years, exploded in the market. The Invisible Chain series about family expectations and identity sold for 7 figures. Celebrities started seeking me out. Museums wanted exhibitions. But I kept everything under a pseudonym, D.R. Morrison. D for Daniel. R for Rose. Only a handful of people knew my true identity. James Rothschild was one of them. He had bought 5 of my pieces and was interested in funding my international expansion. I sat in my studio, surrounded by canvases worth more than any deal RJ had ever closed, and called my assistant. Sarah, I need you to arrange something for me. It's time for the Morrison family to meet D.R. Morrison. 3 days later, the bomb dropped. The New York Times published a cover story. The mysterious D.R. Morrison revealed, the billionaire artist who revolutionized the art market. My phone exploded immediately. Calls from RJ, Victoria, Marcus, messages from my mother. But it was my father's silence that said everything. The article detailed everything. How? D.R. Morrison had become the world's most valuable living artist in just 18 months. How his art technology company was valued at $2.3 billion. How he had quietly donated millions to art programs in underserved schools. And there, on page 3, was my photo. Daniel Morrison, the loser son of Richard Morrison. The journalists had done their homework. They mentioned Morrison Holdings estimated my family's net worth at $500 million. Then casually mentioned that my personal net worth had surpassed $1 billion. But the final blow came in the last paragraph. When asked about his family's support in his artistic journey, Morrison replied, "Family are the people who believe in you when you're still learning to believe in yourself. Some people are lucky to be born into one. Others have to create their own." An hour after the article came out, I got a call from Victoria. "Why didn't you tell us?" she demanded. "Would you have cared about my art or the money?" I asked. Her silence was answer enough. Marcus tried next, more diplomatic. "Man, this is incredible. Dad's in shock. Mom keeps showing the article to everyone. 3 days ago, I was a disgrace." That was, he meant every word, Marcus. "And you all agreed?" RG didn't even bother pretending. "You could have been transparent about your success. It seems like you were deceiving us." I almost laughed. "I never lied. You just never asked. You assumed failure because it didn't involve ties and spreadsheets." 2 days later, my father showed up at my studio. Sarah let him in. I had told her to expect this. He stood in the doorway, looking around. The canvases on the walls, the sculptures, the $1 million view. I saw his eyes calculating values. "Daniel?" "Richard." I hadn't called him Dad in years. "You made me look like a fool. You did that yourself." He clenched his fist, then relaxed. The old Richard would have yelled. This one seemed smaller. Why the secrecy? I put down my brush and faced him. "Would you have cared about my art if there wasn't money involved?" "Ever in 29 years. Did you look at something I created and see value beyond dollar signs?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "You know what's ironic?" I continued. "I used the failure you always saw in me as fuel. Every canvas is about rejection transformed into purpose. You gave me my art, Dad, just not the way you planned. We could have been partners," he said finally. "Morrison Holdings could have invested." "No." My voice was firm. You don't understand. I don't want your empire. I never did. I built my own, and it doesn't need your approval to exist. For the first time in my life, I saw my father speechless. The family is expecting me to fix this, he said eventually. The family was present when you humiliated me. Where were their objections then? He turned to leave, then stopped. Your grandmother would be proud. She always was. She was the only one. After Hilaf, I sat in front of a blank canvas, but for the first time in years, I felt no need to paint the pain. 6 months passed. My relationship with the family remained distant but different. They didn't call me a loser anymore, obviously, but they didn't call much either. I continued my work, expanding to Asia and Europe. I opened art schools in underserved communities. I created scholarships for young artists whose families didn't support them. At every opening, I told my story, not for revenge, but for hope. Success doesn't have to look like what others expect, I'd say. Sometimes the path everyone says is wrong is exactly where you should be. James Rothschild became not just an investor, but a friend. You know what I admire most about you? He said, during dinner in Paris, you could have revealed everything that night. Humiliated your father like he did to you. What for? I replied. Revenge is a wasted blank canvas. I'd rather create something beautiful. And it was true. The boy who left that dining room seeking validation had transformed into a man who didn't need it. Success, I learned, isn't about proving others wrong about you. It's about proving to yourself that you were right all along. If you made it this far, tell me, have you ever been called a loser for following your dreams? How did you transform that rejection into fuel? Share your story in the comments. Hit that like button if you believe success has many forms. And subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to accept the limits others imposed. Remember, sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is simply being authentically yourself. And to all the losers out there painting, writing, creating, dreaming, keep going. The world needs your art more than you know.